Hey everyone, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Paranomaly Beyond Disclosure. Now, we are a weekly podcast focusing on the paranormal, the supernatural, and the metaphysical. Now, join us for thought-provoking discussions on paranormal phenomena, conspiracies, and all things unexplained as we talk to researchers and investigators about ghosts and hauntings, UFOs and aliens, urban legends, cryptids, and so much more. Please be sure to like, subscribe, and follow to receive notifications when new content is made available. You can also visit us at www.paranormallypodcast.com for more content and information, including all our social links. I thank you again for watching and or listening, and we hope to see you for the next episode of Paranomaly Beyond Disclosure. So grab yourself a drink and a snack, turn the lights off on the way back, find yourself a nice comfy spot, and enjoy this episode of Paranomaly. Stay with us, folks. Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching, listening. Hopefully you're going to be on here asking some wonderful questions. We have a great show tonight. We are talking to Sherri Divband. And folks, let's just put it this way. She is a great person. I have been watching a lot of her stuff to get myself updated with her and what she does. And I'll tell you, my mind has been blown, and I believe that yours will be as well. So, Sherri, thank you so much for coming on our show. Please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me on to your platform. It's an honor to be here with both of you and with all of your guests. So thank you. A little bit about me. I don't even know where to start because I have my reach is in many different directions, but primarily I work with clients, both adults and children, on doing soul readings, helping them navigate through their activation and awakening, navigating 3D interference, what I call it. I do a lot of work day to day with clients, and through that work, I publish the books that I have. So the information that I learn in my sessions goes into the books, kind of like, not to compare myself to Dolores Cannon, but it's similarly how her books are from her client sessions. Mine are the same. So I'm not a researcher, and I don't dedicate my time as a psychic sitting down and trying to tap into the collective to gain information for this sort of thing. So everything I get is through sessions, whether it's with my clients or through my own family. And so I do a lot of work with clients, mapping out their soul origin. You know, what planets are they connected to? Why did they choose to come into this lifetime? What are they here to work on? Or what are they here to contribute? What are their blocks? And how can we navigate through challenges? Through that, I also work with children. So a big part of what I do is I work with psychic children, starseed children, or we also call them New Earth children. So I help parents work through labels. So there's a lot of misguidance on the labeling children with autism, Asperger's, ADHD, dyslexia. So I help work with families to help them discern what spiritual gifts and psychic abilities their children actually have, which is why they're labeled. So I help a lot of families work through that. And I also have an online school working with children on metaphysical and esoteric and paranormal class content, so they can learn about a lot of the things that they don't learn about in traditional schooling. And I also work with animals. I do animal communication. I was an RBT for over 20 years, which is basically a nurse for animals. I teach classes. I'm an author, public speaker. I go on a lot of interviews and podcasts to kind of raise awareness about a lot of what I refer to as 3D interference and how people can navigate through their awakening, because it can be quite scary to see through the illusion, and kind of people need guidance on what to do next once that occurs.
Yeah, fantastic. Now, let me ask this question before we get really wrapped up here, because uh, Jim likes to get really deep, and I love that. I think that the more we can get out of someone like yourself and how you came upon these gifts, the better. But my first question, uh, now, from your perspective, tell us what you think about ghosts and hauntings.
That's a good question. I think that there's a lot that goes on in the third dimension, which is what we are, what we reside in, at least this matrix, this grid that we are within in the earth plane. There are other dimensional fields that we can tap into. And a lot of, so ghosts, there are different types of ghosts. So it's really hard to categorize them into one spectrum. But there are interdimensional beings. So some of which of what we see are actual interdimensional beings that reside in the fourth dimension, or are interdimensional, so they can travel through. But there are also a lot of trapped souls that cross over, do not cross over rather, after they pass away, and they become trapped here for many reasons. And there's a lot of reasons why that occurs, most of which is traumatic death, whether it's through some sort of psychosis, whether it's dementia, or a tragic death, something that they didn't see coming, may not have been planned, some sort of freak accident, or a murder, or sometimes even suicide. So when people have some sort of a tragic death, the death portal changes, and they actually can become trapped in this dimension. They don't know that they've passed away, and some of them stay back out of spite because they connect to a lower frequency, and they want to haunt people. That's where we get hauntings from. So they want to remain by their free will, because they cannot let go of the 3D. They cannot let go of their anger, resentment, whatever it is that they feel towards a person or a group of people, or an entire demographic or an entire area. So we can have ghosts that are spirits trapped, but there can also be demonic entities. That's where we hear of demons. We have all sorts of different variations. We also have extraterrestrial entities. We also have shadow beings, which don't have a consciousness, so they are just a collective hive mind, entities that connect with each other, and they're kind of like the worker bees that are sent to attack people in the astral realm a lot of the time. So a lot of children, when they have nightmares, they're actually targeted by the red-eyed shadow beings, which are they're part of the ghosts, kind of that realm as well. So it's quite an extensive and expansive question to answer, because there is a lot of ways we can interpret it, and a lot of beings within it.
Let's zoom into. Oh, sorry, Todd. Did you want to say something?
No, go ahead, Jim. Go ahead.
Let's zoom into what you were talking about as to why people get caught in the sort of. I don't know if is there. I mean, what is your perspective on? Is it the third dimension and then fourth dimension, or is there kind of like an interdimensional, non-physical plane that is where they get caught at? And is that primarily a matter of frequency ultimately? That it just depends on where your frequency is at when you disembody, where you wind up in terms of placement in the dimensional range that is the fourth dimension.
So to answer your second question, absolutely yes. So it is frequency based. So you're going to connect with what you resonate with at the time of death. So that's why a lot of the 3D construct is designed in such a way that people are very riddled with dis-ease, or they're not in their right frame of mind when they die. That's what I refer to as the dark players. That's what they want, because when you pass away and you go through the death portal, and you're at a low frequency, you can go to the false light. So there are lots of versions of this, but there's something called the void. And the void is a frequency. It's not a dimension. It's not really in between dimensions either. It's a non-physical quantum space, but that is where a lot of the trapped or lost souls have been held for many years. So when we hear about the negative wheel of reincarnation, or people get into this recycling system, those souls that they're kind of stuck in this lower frequency vibration. So every time they die, they go into this false light. It's like a AI technology, a magnetic grid that actually pulls them, and they will go into the void, and then they get recycled through. And a lot of people have nightmares and dreams of it, and they've been there. I've been there before at will, because I remote viewed it many years ago. I don't recommend anyone do it. It was probably not a good idea for me to do that, or anyone really, because you don't want to become trapped there. But it's really, it's not a physical space. Does that make sense?
Interesting. Yeah. So I've heard this also about the false light and the sort of almost technology that sort of keeps us tethered here. What are the grounds we have for that as to the reality of that? Does that come from what are the pieces of information that have led you to that conclusion, that there is something like that, that is unnatural and is geared in some way towards keeping us fixed here?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, when I work with clients, what I do in an individual client session is I look at past lives, soul origin, call in their galactic guides, family members, the angelic realm, interdimensional beings. It just depends on who they're really connected with most. And through those sessions, I don't know at all what I'm going to find out, because everybody's different. I never know who is going to sign up for a session with me. And so over the years, probably at least condensed within the last decade, through my sessions, I've learned about different aspects or variations of everything that I talk about. And when I hear it 2, 3, 4, 20, 30 times, then I have to start to think, wow, I'm hearing this with a lot of different people. So there has to be some depth of truth to it. Now, of course, there's my perception and how I interpret the information through my sessions. Obviously, it goes through my lens of perception. But I have to account some level of error. But for the most part, the information that I've received in my sessions all kind of come back to the same thing. So I'll hear about the void in one session, and then another session, a client will say, I had a dream, and they'll explain what it looked like. And I'm like, well, that's what that person just said. And then I'll have another session with someone else who are a lot of the ways I learned the most about the void is actually through starseed children. And a lot of what our starseed children are doing as part of their contribution, or the reason that they have incarnated here, is to anchor a physical body. But in the astral realm, they are actually going, so they're tethered to their physical form in the third dimension, but they go in the astral realm during sleep time, and they are working to be part of rescuing souls that are still connected to that void. And they show me how they get there, what they do once they're there, who they work with, their network, their collective, and how they rescue souls. So there's a whole other arena that I learned about through those sessions. So over the last decade, but really more specifically over the last 3 to 4 years, I've learned more than I ever wanted to know or knew that I wanted to know through the sessions that I've had.
Interesting. Okay. So how exactly are they characterizing this specifically? When they tell you about this thing, this whatever we want to call it, the void or the matrix, how are they characterizing it? How are they describing this? And what?
So I work. I have a lot of different ways that I work, but sometimes it's audible. But a majority of the time, it's direct downloads or visions. So literally, I will connect with them telepathically, and I'll receive a download all at once, just like you drop a file, and then suddenly you have the whole file. And within seconds, I'll have a lot of information. But then it takes me several minutes because it has to go through my human brain, and I have to process it. So I write it down, and then I'll write down what it looked like and how it felt, or how it made me feel, or what it looked like, or what colors there were, or what sounds. All of the kind of the variables, and then I'll compare my notes. So I might not have a session with somebody that has something like that to talk about for 3 months. Maybe it's a year that goes by. So I keep all of my notes, and then I'll go back and I'll start to compare, and I'll see the similarities. So there are a lot of similarities. So it comes in visions, and downloads are the two main ways that I'm shown. And I've only heard the term the void within the last year. It's never been called to me that way before. It's always just a space. It's always just a place that I go that I see. And to me, when we see in movies, it depicts like, oh, is that hell? Or what is that place? But it wasn't referred to as the void until probably within the last year, where a name was actually given me. So it really is just kind of a frequency or a space that I tap into. And, in hindsight, when I look back, I've taken many shamanic healing courses, And shamans will do something where they take you into the underworld. And I've also recognized the similarities between their underworld and the void, and I think, and hell. And I feel like a lot of these are just similar places that have different names, but they reference kind of the same ideal. So I think it's just it's up to our interpretation, and it could have many different names, but the theme is generally the same.
Yeah, so I've heard shamanistic practices reference this kind of concept of taking you to the underworld so that when you die, you don't die, or something. What does that mean to you exactly?
So what they're trying to say is that, you know, our souls can never be hijacked. And what I mean by that is our souls are infinite, expansive, and you cannot sell your soul really at the root of what your consciousness is, because it can't be bought. So when we have an incarnation, we actually fragment an aspect of our light. So a small fractal will come up, and we will have, and then our part of our aspect of our consciousness goes in, and then we become a human being, for example, or maybe we're a Pleiadian, or whatever we choose to be. It could be a dolphin. That's just a small fractal of our consciousness. So when that dolphin or that human being passes away, that fractal will rejoin the overall consciousness, or sometimes people refer to it as the oversoul. But the way this 3D grid is designed, that fractal, because we have 3D interference and a lot of trauma in the third dimension, that fractal becomes fragmented over many lifetimes of trauma. So whether it's actually trauma or enslavement, disease, or a collection of different things, that fractal becomes fragmented.
And does it actually mean like that, you know, parts of it are becoming, or you're accreting dense, lower vibrational energy, or what's the mechanism?
Yeah, it means like it's wounded, and you lose, like it loses its life spark. So we come in as this beautiful ball of high vibrational light, and if we have a lot of traumas or a lot of lifetimes of trauma, that light starts to dim, and it starts to become wounded, and the vibration starts to lower until you really reside and match into the 3D grid. And then when you become a match to the 3D grid, you're really fragmented. And a lot of patients that are diagnosed with schizophrenia or bipolar, they are severely fragmented, and they're actually split in between many different lifetimes, many different aspects of their self they're tapping into at the exact same time. And it can be quite confusing. So that's a whole other layer to it. But when you become fragmented and then you die, it's really challenging for that fragmented aspect of yourself to find its way back to the oversoul. So they developed the void, or whatever you want to call it, through technology, so that fragmented aspect, instead of finding its way to the oversoul, it will be ushered into the void, and then it's just there, and it's in a holding space. And that's when people say, when they tap into it, if you close your eyes, you hear screaming, it's dark, it's dense, it's scary, you're hungry, there's fear, sadness, all of these things at the same time. It's overwhelming with information. Some say they see fire, some say it's just complete black, but you feel trapped and you feel alone and you're scared. And then you'll just sit there until whomever the powers that be within that demographic will invite your soul into whatever it is that they need you to be in within the 3D grid to keep it functioning. Kind of like in the Matrix, if you were in those little pods, you would be in those pods until they need you. And then they would use you. They would connect you to, all right, I need more people in the life of child trafficked. I need them to be trafficked. I need more people in poverty. I need more people that we can enslave to do these jobs. I need someone to do this. And it's a system. So whatever they need, they plug you into that system that's needed at that time.
Okay. So that's disconcerting. So you know, just the average person, you know, a lot of people generally think, you know, that there was a higher consciousness, sort of spiritual plan, you know, initiated, you know, before incarnation, you know, and that they are, you know, put into, you know, some kind of purpose or life path, you know, that is about growth, you know, that is oriented towards, you know, advancement. Are some people, or a lot of people, or most people, sort of not in that kind of system anymore, and they're just is that your perspective, or?
Yeah, I really want to make sure that I'm clear, because I don't want to scare anybody. And this is exactly why I've written so many books and why I speak publicly about this, because it's confusing, but there's a happy ending involved. That's why we're talking about it. So if you think about us as a oversoul coming in and fractaling ourselves to have a human experience, that was the plan. That's what Lemuria was about. Atlantis was about. That's why we have a lot of indigenous cultures that have thrived for millions of years. But over time, as we allow technology and other interplanetary beings to come here and coerce the powers that were at that time with technology and power, we really left the divine feminine, even for the men, and we really anchored in that at first this divine masculine, but then it went from divine masculine to more egocentric, primal human capacity of power, greed, thirst for this and that, and it escalated out of control with the technology. And so we started to push away the divine feminine, and that's when we fell from the fifth dimension into the third dimension. And so when we're in this third dimension, then a lot of people have become trapped here. So everyone is a starseed. That just means that we come from the stars. No one is really truly indigenous to this planet except the guardians of the planet. So we've all come from source. We fractal out and we have experiences in many different planets, many different universes. That's why we have the multiverse. But Earth has gone through many transitions. So when we dropped into the third dimension, and a lot of these beings and entities that many people don't even realize how big the pyramid actually is, they started to create the matrix. They created an experiment where this dimension was full of enslaved human beings, so souls that were basically and essentially trapped here. Then we have beings like Yeshua and the Buddha and all of these beings that are starseeds from out of the network that in our past have volunteered to come in here and try to touch and awaken the humans around and say, you are asleep, essentially. Wake up. I'm not your savior. Don't praise me. I'm just trying to remind you of who you are, because it is an illusion for the most part. The third dimension is filled with trickery, interference, programming, manipulation, everything that they can do to make us forget who we are through genetic modification, through the schooling system, through everything that they do. They create this illusion, and we become disconnected, and we resonate at a lower frequency. So in the last 100 or so years, we've had a large percentage of starseeds, meaning ascended beings that are from fifth dimension and 11th, all over the spectrum of the universe, volunteer to come in and say, I'm going to incarnate in a human body, and I'm going to, and we have a lot of them. So it's not just one savior, one person that people look up to. We're going to bring many, and we're going to infiltrate the matrix with beings of light to shift the energy and the frequency just by them being here. But then those people are going to go out and be influential in society in some way, in a positive way, so that they make people feel good. They promote compassion and empathy and working together. And those are the genuinely kind people who are not following woke agendas and all of these things that they're pushing. And so now we create these two conflicting frequencies, and this helps other people that have been connected to this grid for a long time, who are star seeds but have just forgotten, and are basically, their light is dim and they're really anchored in the 3D. They're starting to spontaneously awaken or activate, or they have a near-death experience, or something occurs in their life, and then they start to wake up. And so that's where we are. So what I'm trying to say is that probably in the last 50 years or so, when we had the 75 years, we had the indigos, and then we had the second wave of indigos, which is me. So those in their 30s, 40s, and early 50s. The first wave were the indigos, were the 55, 60s, and into the 70s right now. And then we have other waves. So the more waves of starseeds that we come in shifts the frequency and the genetics. So we start to activate and awaken our DNA. And that's why we have children coming in now who remember their past life. The veil is very thin, and we're shifting and altering the matrix, and the void is breaking down, and it does not exist. So no one anymore is done. When they pass away, are they going into the void? It does not exist anymore. And I want to be clear about that. So it's really not disconcerting. And I don't say it to create fear. I say it to show people the progress that we've made over the last 100 years and how much progress we've made in the last 50 years, the last 30 years, and more specifically in the last 5, where the void is not allowed to bring in more people. It doesn't exist anymore. Really what's occurring is those fragmented souls that might still be connected to it in some way are being pulled out and reconnected and healed with their oversoul. And that's why a large group of starseeds that are here are helping with that. Does that make sense? Because I don't want anyone to walk away in fear.
No, yeah. I think that clarifies that. So just to put it more simply, despite, there is, let's say, a more kind of overarching sort of spiritual agenda, and which takes into account, being stuck into the matrix, for a period of lifetimes and cycling through negative lifetimes. Would that also be something that you would subscribe to, or that's?
Yeah. I mean, that's a really a simpler way of putting it, that we are working our way out of the matrix. I think many people can agree that the matrix is breaking down. The paradigms, the pillars that keep the matrix going is collapsing in all arenas, all aspects of our everyday life, whether it's politics, the medical industry, the education, military. Everything is starting to break down, and we're starting to see like little pinholes and the lights shining through. And now we're able to see beyond the illusion and what's actually going on. And that's causing more awakenings. And so that matrix is breaking down. And that's what I refer to as the Great Awakening. I didn't come up with that term, but that's one of the ways it's referenced as the Great Awakening. That's what's happening. That's the ascension. We wake up, we activate, we remember who we are, and our innate abilities start to come back. So that's where the disclosure comes in. So people watching this podcast and many other podcasts are inspired by someone speaking about it, and then they have a spontaneous remembrance or a knowing, or they resonate with what someone like myself is saying and say, "Oh, I think she's right." And then next thing you know, our mindset shifts, and then we start to see everything completely different. And that's happening on a daily basis, where people are saying, "I now look at everything different," and none of the 3D interference works when we are tapped in and we are able to go within. None of it works against us.
But as far as, because clearly, what we're seeing, modern day, as far as these, current ideologies that are sweeping, across the country and the world, really, that is, despite that, there's still, in your mind, a kind of overwhelming awakening happening simultaneously. Like all of these, new children being born aren't getting sort of caught up into these ideologies as they intend. You see that there's a significant population that is seeing through this, that's not being hypnotized by woke ideologies and anti-woke ideologies.
Or any extreme ideology. Yes. So remember that there's a significant number of NPCs on this planet as well. So there are those that are connected to the matrix. So there are clones, there are holographic projections, there are shape-shifting extraterrestrials, reptilians, and then there is a large portion of the human population that over time, the more you get connected to the negative frequency, you lose connection with your higher self, and entities take over. So a lot of the NPCs are people that we maybe have known throughout our whole life, have been through so many traumas that their soul actually checks out and dissociates. And so that means that their soul kind of comes out of the body. It doesn't want to have this experience. Maybe they have heavy drug use or some sort of addiction, and the soul retracts and says, because souls don't want to be high or drunk. That's such a low frequency. So when the soul retracts out, then that leaves an opportunity for entities that are just wandering, that want to take over, and then they'll come in. And that's why people black out when they are drunk and say, "I don't remember anything I did." The next day they have no recollection. That's because they didn't do it. Their soul was up here, an entity came over their body, and they did heinous acts, horrible things, or maybe they just acted crazy, and they don't have any inhibitions because that entity took over part-time. But then we have a situation where, or like the movie Venom, for example, where they can take over long term or forever. And that's what we're seeing with a lot of the woke agendas. When we had Antifa, we had BLM, and we had all of these woke agendas that started as these groups. And now we're seeing the overall woke agenda and a lot of them transgender movements and all of that. A lot of those are NPCs where they have targeted why do you think a lot of those unfortunately the youth that they target are runaways, drug addicts, homeless? Those are the ones in the lowest vibration. They don't have a network. They don't have love in their family, so they're easy to have entity attachments that take over, and then they will push these agendas. Now, to answer your other to answer your other question, because it's extremely important that you brought that up. I work with a lot of children who, when I connect to their higher self, because that's where I get a lot of the most important information from. What they're telling me is, let's say a young girl that's following through or trying to push for a sex change, for example. They're transgender. And I tap into their soul and I'm like, is this really what you want? Are you being manipulated? Are you getting sucked into the 3D, or what's happening here? And what I'm learning is quite the opposite. A lot of them, just like imagine a soldier that needs to infiltrate and they got to go in and do stuff that they didn't really want to do. Maybe they're a double agent. So they got to do some bad stuff to be with the bad guys, to learn about what's going on or to affect in some way. It's almost like a lot of starseeds are volunteering to be embedded in the woke culture, whatever the ideology is or whatever it is that they're pushing. Could even be political. And because they're immersing themselves in that vibration so that they can affect change from the inside with their frequency. They may not have a conscious knowing that they're doing it, and that's on purpose because it has to be authentic. That has to feel authentic to the consciousness of the soul inhabiting that body. But on the soul level, they're like, no, this is actually on purpose, and it will reveal itself soon.
Interesting. Yeah, wow, you have a lot of interesting perspectives on this that I have not yet heard. Yeah, of course. Anyone who finds themselves, within the woke ideology, there's some kind of spiritual design to that. That's meant to happen for some kind of reason, whether it's for personal growth or whether it's, to embed, in these groups, and it's more for a collective change kind of reason. Yeah, very interesting. So let's maybe transition into starseeds, and maybe for our audience who is unfamiliar with starseeds, what are some of the attributes of a starseeds? Even including, go into what I find interesting is there's some weird things, that I have heard about starseeds. Some other sort of details that are lesser known, like the ability to hear higher frequencies, for example, than the norm. Or just go into some of that. What are some of the attributes? I know you think that we all are starseeds. Okay, so maybe this is a non sequitur, but there is there's a different category, isn't there? There seems to be some group that are, I don't want to say more advanced, but I don't know how to put it. Yeah,
I could read the question. I know exactly what you're saying, and I have an answer for you. So yes, everyone's a starseed to some degree, but not everybody's aware and awake. So the volunteers that come in from a higher frequency come through, and depending on where they come, there's a lot of factors here. So there are a lot of Lyrans right now on the planet, a huge percentage of Lyran starseeds. There are a lot of Arcturians. There are a good amount of Pleiadians. There are some Andromedans. There are Sirians. There are even Orions that are here that are warrior spirits from the Orion Wars that were able to assist, and then they go and they work with other planets that are going through an ascension pathway, and they go to assist. So not every starseed has had lifetimes on this planet. especially a human being. They might have had many lifetimes as a humanoid or a human hybrid-like species, but a lot of the newer starseeds have not had a lifetime here. So that's where we have the newer Earth children that are really different, and they struggle. I have had sessions with one that's the most famous, I think, at this point, that went viral a while back when I talked about it. He's from Alpha Centauri, and he had to train for 150 Earth years to learn how to be a human being before he could even come into this life to be who he is. And he's on the spectrum and nonverbal in this life, at least at that point years ago, because it was so difficult and challenging for him to be in a human body. So they have to acclimate and integrate to be human. And so they're heightened, they have a lot of heightened senses, just like animals. So they're more in tune, kind of like with the animal kingdom. So they hear different frequencies. They tune into higher frequencies. They see different colors. They are extremely psychic. They actually do remember their past lives. They will literally tell me, I remember being on Mars in wars, and I lost my arm, and this and that. And I talk to children who tell me where they're from, and they remember, and they ask their parents, how come they don't remember that they were in the Pleiades? How come they can't remember what they look like? And this body is weird, and it's heavy, and it's dense, and it feels funny, and food doesn't taste good, or this type of food doesn't taste good, or I don't want to eat meat, or their senses are off, and they find it difficult to walk, so they walk funny. And that's where we have the spectrum, what we call the autistic spectrum, because a lot of children severely struggle being a human being. They don't want to use our words because they don't want to use our spells. They know that words are spells created by the third dimension, because other beings out in the universe, they speak through frequency, tones, and music. So they speak telepathically, heart to heart, where they communicate directly through downloads. But when they verbally speak, it's harmonies and frequencies and tones. That's why we have light language. We're one of the only places that separate those tones into words that have a specific meaning, but then we have misinterpretation on purpose. So then we can't quite communicate how we eloquently as we would like and as authentic, because words actually break up the patterns, and they have spells within them, which is created by the dark grid, the matrix. They did that to limit our capacity to communicate. So these children will come in and they will refuse to speak because they will not use our words. They know that it can summon demons. They know that it can create negative energy. And so they won't do it. So they're here to teach us telepathy. They're going to teach us how to communicate in a different way. That's why we have so many nonverbal children right now. Were you going to ask a question?
Well, yeah. I mean, I just wanted to linger back on what you said about telepathy, and so because we interview a lot of abductees, and they're communicated telepathically in language, in human language, in words, that manifest in their mind. But that's not how they're communicating amongst themselves. These higher ascended beings or extraterrestrials, they're not, telepathically communicating their own language, verbal words, in mind-to-mind communication. Mm-hmm. They're speaking in, what did you say, tones and music.
Yeah, they learn our language so that they can communicate with us, and the word spells aren't going to work on them because they're in a frequency they're unattached. So it's like they could say our words and we might invoke a demonic entity without realizing it. For them, it's not going to work. So they're happy to speak our language for our benefit so we can understand. But when I've tapped into other species, sometimes it'll be a series of clicks, and it's a clicking sound. I've heard others speak of, it's like a melody. When I connect with angels, generally it's a chorus, and it sounds like the most beautiful melody of, like, I can't reproduce it, but the point is that majority of them have a method of communication that's vocal, but I've never heard any species separate into like words like we do. It's more, and if it is, it's more like a song. Like if we sang a song to each other, I could break it up into words. This is the best way I could describe it. But if we stop the song without the music, and I just talk as I'm talking to you right now with different words, it changes the entire frequency of the communication. It slows it down. And that's what they want in the matrix, because that is how they control the communication. and that's how we have issues, and it causes a lot of problems. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does. So you were talking earlier too about starseeds who have to come in and are really sort of maladjusted, to this type of environment and have to learn. We actually have an interesting clip, and maybe we should play that, Todd. I don't know if you've ever heard of Inalia Benz, who is like not your typical starseed. She's I believe she claims to have come from like the collective level, where she hasn't been recycling, through lifetimes on this planet. And she's had to go through being born and going through childhood was this whole sort of learning process of figuring out how to operate the body and how to stay inside the body, even, and, work the arms and to see through the eyes and everything. And it's just really interesting. We have this really interesting clip, and maybe we should play it here since you were just referencing that. And this should be of interest here to our audience.
Now, and we haven't got to the end of those stories yet. There are so many of them. One of them that I think is a really neat story is when you were a little girl and you kept on falling over.
Yes. One of the things that I tried to do, because you have to understand, I came in like half an hour before the body was born, and then there had to be a body agreement for me to come in, because it wasn't your regular incarnation where the soul would be there waiting for the body, or like there's a link between the two and everything, and there was this moment of asking for agreement from the body to take this on, to it's like, shall we do this? And there was a definite yes, but it was completely different to how I see humans functioning, because I came in and I had no idea how to drive the body, right? So the body kind of intelligence went into the physical body to animate it, to make it alive and to make it function and breathe and everything else. And I was kind of outside and I wanted to do stuff with this body, but I didn't know how. I didn't have the manual. And when I looked into it, it was like a computer that needed to be programmed, right? It needed to learn how to move its arms, grab things, be able to speak and communicate, move the head sideways when I was interested in something that was going on there. And I didn't know how to move this little body's head that way so I could see it, right? And stuff like that. But from that moment, I was not inside the vision, the visuals were outside the body on the back of the head from that moment. And the only thing that changed was that I was trying to move the arms like a puppet, and it just wasn't working, and the body was complaining. So it kind of told me, no, you have to go in and move the arms from within, kind of thing, like getting into a suit. So I did that, but I didn't do it from a viewpoint. I didn't do my viewpoint. I just did like an energy entering. So I was able to move the arms and legs, and it was like programming the body how to function and stuff like that. Very mechanical. It was literally like writing a program on a computer. For me, that's how it was. And the years went by, and I used to see everything. I had a 360 degree and up and down visual of everything that was going on around me. And I kept falling over time and again because my viewpoint was around here. So I couldn't see what was in front of me as I was walking in the street, for example. And because the head was on the way, right? So I kept falling over, and I had continuously, my knees were always bleeding and my face was always smashed. My lips were always fat because I kept falling on my head. And then one day my mom says, why can't you use your eyes? Just use your eyes. Look at what's in front of you. So I said to her, well, I can't, because when I looked through my eyes, it was like two tiny little pinpricks that you can only see a tiny little bit of what's going on. And then she says, well, what are you doing now? So I said, well, I can see everything. And she, and then again, it's like it was like, I can't remember the exact conversation, but it went something like, well, get into your body right now and use your eyes. Just start using your eyes. And being like, I think it was just before I started school, so I was about 4 years old. Being a child, 4 years old, you do what your mommy tells you. So I did that, and for me it was horrible. I could hardly see anything, and I had to point my head everywhere so I could see what was going on, and I couldn't turn my head all the way around, so I never knew what was going on behind me. It was very disconcerting for quite a long time. But I stopped falling over because I could see what was in front of me.
And even now.
Okay, so credit to Bill Ryan's channel, Project Avalon, to that. And comment on that. And have you ever run into anybody that was similar to that? I have not. She seems unique from my perspective, but
yeah, unfortunately, or however you want to look at it, fortunately, I have a good majority of my clients have had that issue. So I'm very familiar with what she's saying. So, there are a lot of starseeds, especially the new Earth starseeds. Why we call them that is because many of them have been incarnated here, or if they have, it hasn't been since the time of Lemuria or ancient civilizations. So they haven't been in a physical body in a long time. Maybe they're from the collective consciousness or soul groups like a supernova or something. So they are not used to a form at all. They're used to being light beings, or they're used to being able to transition into whatever form they want. So it's really hard for a soul to feel trapped within inside a body. And that's the biggest complaint that I get. That's why a lot of starseeds do not want to be a child. They really struggle. Well, that's why we have reverse walk-ins, which we can circle back to, where they come in later and they have kind of a volunteer angelic presence to be in their body for a certain amount of years, so that their body can develop and they can slowly integrate and take their time. Otherwise, what happens is there's an integration period between the physical born, like the body, the flesh and bones body, the physiology, and the soul and the light. The two have to merge together, and they have to get along. They have to integrate. And that starts from the time of conception throughout the pregnancy, and even etherical pregnancies. Even before the conception occurs, there's the integration between the mother and the soul coming through. So it actually goes way back farther than you think, that you realize. And I've learned all this over the years. And so they need to integrate a little bit. So instead of their full frequency coming in, only a small portion will come in at a time. And that's why we have like the severely autistic children who, they can't even walk. They need to be fed with a feeding tube. They have seizures. Those are the ones that have failure to thrive, or the ones that really struggle because
only a small portion of their soul is that why you're saying because only a small fraction of their soul has entered the body and it's not?
Exactly. So the body has just enough life force to live, but it can't function. So they're very disconnected. So the body can't hold the frequency. And the starseeds that we're seeing today are different than the starseeds 75 years ago, even 43 years ago when I was born, because we needed transitions to occur in the epigenetics so that our bodies can withstand higher frequencies. So with each generation, the bodies are able to hold higher and higher frequencies. So what she's talking about are the souls that know they are coming in and they have to integrate. How do I keep myself attached to this body? How do I move this thing? How do I look through the eyes instead of the third eye, which is basically your expanded perception, which is what she was talking about. That's why we see a lot of autistic children flapping their arms, or they walk on tiptoes, or they constantly are moving. They can't sit. Especially ADHD children, they can't sit still. They have higher processing speeds. They have a lot of energy and revolutions per minute, cycling constantly, and they cannot sit still. They don't know how to keep their body calm. Their body can't integrate that light. So there's a lot of things occurring that most of the population has absolutely no idea. So unfortunately, these children are mislabeled as they're not normal, or they need to be put on medication, or they have behavioral issues. When in reality, they're struggling, and they don't know how to articulate why they're struggling or what's going on, because not everybody is as consciously aware like that woman that we just saw who remembers. A lot of the starseeds coming in on purpose say, I don't want to remember everything. It will be too overwhelming. So they don't understand what's happening. So when the parent contacts me and says, help me figure out or discern what's going on with my child, I'll go straight to the higher self and I'll say, what's going on here? and they'll explain to me, I have never been on Earth before. I've only had 3 lives. This is my 3rd life, or whatever the situation is. But that's why we're seeing this occur a little bit more now than we have previous generations.
Yes.
Sherri, let me ask this question. Now, and I hate bringing this up, but it's important to me. Now, what is the religious aspects of this? And what I mean is, in religion, especially our type of religion, it's believed that God created a person and out of his own image, and now we're saying that, well, we could be aliens or any number of different things. What is the defining point of this?
I mean, that's a really good question, Todd. I think it comes down to, are we as human beings so close-minded that we think that we're the only children of God? You know, so aliens are just another version of us, and I don't even like using the word aliens. Interdimensional beings, other beings, are essentially from the same source of light. That's why we hear the word source. So we a lot of other beings don't refer to God like we do, but essentially God and source is the same thing. So if there is one source of energy, let's just say, if that we take religion out of it altogether, I believe in God, so I'm not going against it. I'm just saying, to simplify it for those that don't like to hear those words, and it fractals out into lots of different versions of light. And those versions of light have the opportunity to have an individual experience, to incarnate any which way they want for millions of years, however many times they want to. But collectively, they're all connected in this web. And then if you combine the experiences of all of the beings, all the fractals, the millions and upon millions in different universes that are parallel to each other, different species, different planets, all of those fractals of light all connect to that one source light. So it's everybody's sharing the same experience, learning the same thing. It's a network of information. So humans are just one tiny little fractal of the expansive potential of all of life that there is. But religion, what they do as part of the 3D grid, I believe, the dark players, the players that want to control, have to figure out a way to control us. So if we believe that we are so incredible and expansive as how I just mentioned, and so important and significant, then we will be less likely to be vulnerable to manipulation and control. So they have to make us feel like, no, we are, God is here, and they made us in our image, and we are sinners, and we have to praise, and we don't have the potential, and we have to look out to have that potential, and we're limited, and we can't do this, and anything outside of this is sorcery, and all the things that they do to lie to us, to limit our capability and our beliefs. Those are limiting beliefs. So people adopt those, and they hang on to it so much that it becomes their life jacket, and they can't think outside of that, because that's all they know. And that's where we get that the division of religion, when in reality, if you look at someone in each religion, you recognize, well, everybody feels the exact same way. So, well, how are we divided? It's all about how you slice it and which words you use and what name you put on God. Do you know what I'm saying?
And now the other point that I have is, if we are energy, our bodies we don't have them. We're just an energy being, because that's what we are. We can choose our mothers. So as we're out there, we choose who we want to be with, in a sense. So why would we want to become a human being instead of interdimensional traveler? I mean, it just seems like our human beings, to me, are like the worst ever. Now, not everybody, but there is a thing of power and ego, and that gets us all into deep trouble. So to be in the more divine, how do we eliminate this problem? Like you said, if you die and it was very tragic, you're going to be stuck. Well, if we're energy, would we really be stuck?
Sorry, I was waiting for you to finish.
No, that's part of the question right there.
Yeah, no, these are really, really great points. I don't even know where to start, but going from the end, no one is ever really stuck. That's the problem. But what happens is, if your soul has all these fractals, and it's all in a lot of different places at once by your choosing. Like as my soul, I want to experience life as a human, as a dolphin, as a Sasquatch, as an Arcturian, as this and that, for whatever, all these other things. Great, that's my soul's evolution. I want to experience it because it's going to expand my consciousness, because dimensions and density of consciousness are two different things. That's why we have the old soul, those that you talk to that clearly have been around a lot, and they're very wise. Their density of consciousness is expanded and much more in higher density than somebody who is clearly, they haven't been around much and they really have no common sense or no depth to them. So that's where the difference comes in. So we want to experience all of these things. And what I have been told is that having the human experience outside of the third dimension and the control grid, putting that aside, the reason why people wanted to come in and have that a human experience is because we are one of the only species that have the dynamics and variables that we have here. We have the spectrum of emotions that we have the capability of feeling is probably one of the biggest of all species. So that's number one. That's something unique. Like you talk to a Pleiadian, they're going to tell you we have a third of the amount of emotions that you experience. And the depth of those emotions is even smaller. The spectrum is even smaller. So they want to come in and they want to experience it, because sometimes if we're living in bliss for eternity, it gets kind of boring. And so souls are like, you know what? I kind of want to go in and experience what it's like to have conflict, where I come in a human form and I have all these emotions I got to work through. And let's see how two people can work out some sort of a problem. And it's like a game, you know, when we have company over and we want to play Monopoly or we want to play a game, we want to experience, put our mindset into something and another reality, for example. It's the same thing. So they come in and we want to experience, and that's where we have soul contracts. So aside from the 3D grid and all of the manipulation, we have soul contracts. So I have a soul contract with my mother and father and my children and my husband, etc. And everybody does. Everyone that you come into contact with your life, you have a soul contract to some degree with. Now, that being said, if I need to experience betrayal, I want to. My soul's like, you know, I really want to know what it feels like to be betrayed. So I'm going to have a lifetime where someone betrays me. Well, you have to have a soul that volunteers and says, okay, I'll be the antagonist in your lifetime and I'll be your boyfriend in this life and I'm going to betray you. And we have an agreement on a soul level where, okay, I'm going to let you betray me and I'm going to feel it and I'm going to work through it. And then I'm going to learn that lesson. And then when I die, I'll have that experience. But the problem is, this is very surface level. The problem is when you come into the 3D and we have these dark players that want to control everything, want to keep and suppress us into this enslavement system. We are bombarded by so much trauma that we don't calculate outside of here. So when we come in and we experience betrayal from the antagonist, that soul that we asked for, we forget, and now we hate them, we resent them, we can't forgive them, and it compounds, and we don't realize that we asked that person to teach us the lesson. So we have resentment that builds up between us, and the soul contracts become convoluted. So it's really hard for me to explain in a short period right now the layers of the soul contracts, but they can become quite convoluted. But we do want to, a lot of people, souls do want to come in and be a human, because it's a very unique experience of expression of free will, sovereignty, limit abilities, because we can't just come in. We don't have the ability to use, our senses are limited here. And we can't instantly manifest and close our eyes and open them and then our house is built. You know, there's physicality, there's time. And so there's all these elements of the third dimension that some souls find enticing. And they're like, wow, this is a great environment for me to learn something from it. I want to learn what it's like to be a mother. I want to learn what it's like to, whatever it may be. So that's the very macro level. But the micro level is when you start compounding the traumas, the 3D interference, the manipulation, the power, and all of this other stuff, and you're bombarded with it, and then you're just turned around and overwhelmed. You forget everything.
But that would be a repeat every time you are reborn, every time you come back. So you wanted to experience what it's like to live a perfect life with lots of money, and then you die, you go into another human where this person gets chopped up with a machete. So they just learned a very valuable lesson as well. But every time you come back, these lessons are all just brutal lessons. They're not anything good. I mean, we all know right from wrong. So you would think, okay, if we have any kind of conscience after we die, we would know that we do not want to come back as human beings, because it's nothing but chaotic.
But it wasn't always that way, Todd. That's the thing. Like, I have a lot of sessions with people who had lifetimes in Lemuria or Atlantis or ancient different variations of the Aboriginals or Incans or Mayans, and all of these different times and eras. And it wasn't always this way. Like, people actually came in and they had these beautiful lives. They had struggles and they learned, and they had trials and errors and failures and epic wins and all of these things and successes. But there wasn't so much of the bombardment of the third dimensional matrix. That's why we call it a matrix now, because we have so much going against us. It's almost like you're constantly going against the current. So people are incarnating now differently for a different reason than they did back then. Because once the matrix started to take over and we started to become massively manipulated, then the human experience wasn't fun anymore, because it's like, well, we're not playing by the right set of rules. You guys are convoluting the free will. And so we're going to experience something, and you are like bullies on a playground manipulating us and suppressing us, and we're not getting anything out of it. We're just feeding into the loosh system that you need us. So you see how over time it flipped. And now the starseeds are coming in not to have a human experience. I didn't want to come here and have a human experience. That wasn't my choice. I came in as a starseed to help activate and awaken humanity through the means that I have done throughout my life. Todd comes into this life. You have a podcast. You're here to say, I'm going to raise awareness about cryptids and paranormal activity and bring to the surface of people's awareness something outside of what the normal, everyday contrasts are. Same with Jim. And so we have these starseeds that come with various potentials, various characteristics, and they're here to contribute in some way. So no one's incarnating right now anymore. I can almost guarantee you, for the fun of it. People are here to work now, and we're here to help. So no one's coming in with that, I want to learn betrayal. No, now it's about ancestral healing. Now it's about stopping the traumas. Now it's about activating and awakening humanity so that we can move into the fifth dimension. Because right now we're traveling through the fourth dimension. Once we get into the fifth and we anchor into a higher dimension, then we can resume what we just said millions of years ago, where we can now come back in as human, but without all of the control mechanisms in place.
Okay. All right. Fantastic.
Okay, so I wanted to comment on something. I'm really curious about this. So say, we do have like this arrangement, to have an experience with this certain person. Say it's not a bad experience. Say it's, a neutral experience or a loving experience even. But there is, existing these entities on the other side who are interfering in that. Say that, one person in this relationship gets an attachment, and this entity attachment is manipulating this person's emotions and behavior in a way that seemingly is unintended. But is it unintended? Like, if you do have sort of, if the relationship between these two people is largely sort of characterized by this interference, coming from this entity, is this entity involved in the contractual relationship at all between these souls? I get the feeling that some of these low vibrational entities aren't sort of playing the spiritual game, you know, or they're sort of like opting out, you know, and are either comfortable where they're at, or they're in such a contracted state of awareness that they can't do any different. So and isn't that happening on such a broad level? There's so much interference happening that how can there be these contractual arrangements that make any sense if there's things that are coming in that aren't involved in that and are influencing people in ways that throw a wrench into the contractual arrangements.
Yeah, and you're completely right about that. And that's what the ascension or the Great Awakening is about. So we are bombarded with frequencies that try to alter our vibration or keep us suppressed. So the very first question you asked is about the ghost realm and this and such. There are so many vulture-like entities out there that are just waiting and fiending for somebody, let's say, to be in rage or sadness or guilt or shame, whatever frequency that they are connected to. And that's why when you go out into public and you go to the grocery store or to concerts or whatever, the airport, there are entities everywhere and they're just searching for a match in frequency. They don't care what I look like or what gender I am or any of that. They don't care about any of, well, maybe the gender they do care, but for hormonal reasons, but they'll find somebody that matches. So someone that's really angry, that entity is like, oh, I love this person that's really angry. And they want you to be their host. So they're going to try to remain with you as long as possible if it's a match, just like the Venom example I used from the movie The Venom. So they'll stick with you. And I have had sessions with people who've had these attachments for their whole life, 10 years, 15 years, or whatever it might be. So when I have a soul contract with somebody and I don't know or realize that they have an entity attachment that's making them project vulgarity, like all this vulgarness or this energy that isn't really truly them, then that amplifies the disconnect between the two. And then it does become disconcerting and it does become very convoluted. And that's why this whole network of the human experience it needs to be rebooted and to reset. So how do we do that? We have to change it from within. And the way we change it from within is activating and awakening as many people as we can so that the souls then reconnect with the body and there's this beautiful light synergy and we activate and awaken. That's why we hear people say, raise your vibration, go within. What that means is as soon as we recognize that we have to take responsibility for the role that we've played in anything in our life, good or bad. I've hurt people. I've done some mean things. I have betrayed. I have me. I've done all this and I forgive myself because I don't know what influence I had around me. Okay, now I'm working on forgiving myself. Now I work on forgiving those that have hurt me because now I recognize that maybe they were traumatized. Maybe they were fragmented. Maybe they had an entity attachment. And you start to look at humanity different and you start judging people and you start to say, oh, well, maybe I feel kind of bad. Maybe they had a lot going on and they were messed up and their free will was altered, right? So now we have this activation within each person and they go within and now we stop looking at the church or the pastors or the mentors or the celebrities or the presidents or whomever and stop looking at everyone else as the savior. And now you say, okay, I have the potential within me to get any answers that I want. The higher I am, the more connected I am to my higher self, the higher frequency resonance that I'm at. None of the illusion works. None of the 3D interference works. No entities want to attach to you. Then you start raising, and you get to a point where now you see through all the BS. Nothing is working on you. Now the woke agenda seem like an absolute joke. How can people fall for it? And now you're like, I feel like I'm living in a twilight zone because nothing makes sense. Like, how do they not see it? And now you start to separate. And that's where we have this split that's occurring in humanity right now, where people who are activated and awakened, they can't even understand how the other people don't see it. And the other people are looking at us like these people are out of their mind. So there's this major disconnect. And we need this to occur. It has to occur. It has to get uncomfortable. We have to go through all of this so that the more of us that we have on this side, not to create division, but our amplification of our frequency, our vibration can then positively affect those over here that aren't quite ready yet And then maybe we can bring some more over and bring some more over. And then now we're more of us than there are of them. And not in numbers, but in energy and frequency and amplification, if that makes sense. It's not about the numbers. That's how we break down the matrix. That's how the convolution breaks down. That's how we save our species. That's how we work together as a collective, where the soul contracts and all of that other stuff I just talked about, it doesn't matter anymore. Because now we have a bigger purpose. It doesn't matter that Sherri needed to come in and learn about patience, and Jim came in to learn about empathy, and Todd came in to learn about compassion and whatever. That doesn't actually matter, because on a macro level, this is much bigger than each of us individually. This is now collective. Now collectively, let's activate and awaken, and then we'll all learn empathy and compassion and self-worth and release judgment, and we can forgive. Do you see how that works? So this is how we ascend and evolve through this transition period, if that makes sense.
Yes, excellent. Thank you. That was great. Just that little bit explained a ton.
Good.
But I do want to get you to clarify one point.
Sure.
So do the soul contracts that we're engaged in, are they factoring in of all of the negative entity interference, or is that stuff completely aberrant with respect to the arrangements? I mean, aren't the arrangements made with, from the, fourth or fifth dimensional perspective, you see the timeline or the possible timelines, and you're aware of these, entities, I'm sure, that are, sort of playing these games and are interfering in ways. To what level are these contractual arrangements factoring in these things, or are you saying that they're not factored in, that these are truly kind of aberrant sort of influences that are just purely disrupting the soul contracts?
I don't think that there's one answer for that, though. That's the thing. I think that both are true. I think that there are soul contracts that are really powerful and strong, and then there are entities that are interfering, and everything in between is all occurring all at the same time. So that's why I talk a lot about ancestral healing. So what I see a lot with the starseeds I work with, and I had a woman today. I'll give you an example specifically from today. I had a woman who I believe was 62, and she has been working with mentally disabled, challenged. There's a lot of different words that she's seen throughout her career, but she works with adults that are challenged in some way, and that are in big homes or specific centers. And when I connected to her higher self, what I learned is that she's a Lyran, and there are millions of Lyrans, but specifically to her soul group, about thousands of Lyrans that have been trapped here. She has not been here probably for a very long time, and she's an ascended being. She volunteered to come into this matrix, to be a human, to bring in her frequency, and to work with the soul contracts that she has are with the mentally challenged adults throughout her career that are Lyrans that have been trapped here. And by her being in their presence at any point, whether it's for one day or years while she's working with them, she's slowly affecting them passively through her frequency to try to heal and awaken them and activate their soul. So her soul contract is to navigate through the 3D interference and deal with all of that, because she's had a lot of challenges throughout her life of feeling connected to a human being, feeling like an outsider, not wanting to have a husband or children. And why did she feel that way? And all of these things she had to deal with, but really feeling like her clients were her children. In reality, they kind of are. These souls have a contract with her for her to help activate and awaken them throughout her entire life. And that's just one example of thousands that we have. So ancestral healing can occur not just with my generational ancestry. It could be soul collective ancestry, where it could be someone on the other side of the world that I take on some level of ancestral healing. So through epigenetics and quantum entanglement, over time, we can heal the collective through connection. And we take on. I've had other women who experience sexual trauma, and they're taking on the burden of cellular memory of trauma of women all over the country, all over the world, that have experienced lifetimes of being trafficked and used for sex trafficking, things like that. And the divine feminine womb trauma, I say that 5 times fast, is so exponentially important and significant right now that a lot of women are coming into this life as a ascended being, experiencing some sort of sexual trauma, so that they can almost take on the collective divine feminine womb trauma experience for themselves, transmute it, use their body as a conduit so they can heal thousands of other women. So we're doing so many layers of ancestral healing right now as well. So on top of everything else, there's a whole other layer to the healing that's occurring collectively as a soul group.
That's interesting. It reminds me of a discussion I just had with my friend who actually just sent me a clip of someone saying essentially that I talk to this person all the time, my friend, about her emotions and her, how she's constantly kind of, in my mind, from my mindfulness perspective, kind of resisting, the present reality, and is, going through a lot of negative emotions, and disgust and disbelief and terror, at what's happening on the planet. And I'm always kind of reminding her, your thoughts and your narrative, that you're running are generating these emotions. And you should maybe get off the ride, of the thought processes that you're going through, because they might not be useful. And the emotions might not be useful. Like, I could be wrong about this, from where you're coming from, because you're feeling these emotions, and I don't know, from my perspective, you're transmitting this, you're emitting these sort of negative emotions, and it might be doing harm to your energy body, as far as your balance of your chakras and whatnot. And it might not be doing service to those around you, potentially. And then she sent me this clip the other day of this woman, talking about, sort of feeling all of these emotions and sort of going through this is transmuting them. And so therefore, she's telling me that, no, I'm supposed to, be going through all of these, negative emotional states. What's your comment on that kind of?
Yeah, I mean, part of the human experience is to, like I said before, the emotional component of being a human is actually quite desirable amongst many beings, because they want to feel, they want to be able to feel things on all levels of spectrum. I want to see what rage feels like. I want to feel what pure bliss feels like, and everything in between. I know that's hard to believe as we experience it now, like, who would want to feel that? But many beings do want to feel that. If you're feeling bliss all the time, sometimes it's nice to feel the contrast of that. And our emotions are part of the physiological makeup of our species for a reason. So that if we feel rage, why are we feeling that? That's our body's way of interpreting an experience and letting us know that it's not a good one. So like, we have these emotions built in to allow us to process and interpret what's happening in any given moment throughout the entire day. We go through this elevator of emotions, this spectrum, and it's there for a reason. It's a guide point. But the problem is, when we get in a low vibration and we're in this cyclic of, like, fear, and the lower vibration that they want us to be at, and anxiety, filled with anxiety and all of that, it's really hard for us to get out of the lower vibrational emotions. We become trapped in it. So if we dip into sadness, that's why people are like, oh, let me just be sad. Like, it's like they want to stay in that, because they get complacent and they get stuck in there. So that's the challenge of the human experience, is our mind takes over. We're too left brain. We're too primal. The physical human experience is very primal. So it's hard to get out. It's hard to allow the emotions to flow. If anything, we get stuck in these patterns. And now, if we're in sadness, then we start to attract the frequency of sadness. So we're attracting more experiences that bring sadness, because we don't realize that that's what we're asking for. We don't realize it on a higher level, but we are attracting those experiences. So it's part of the network of being of the human experience. At the same time, so it's good, but it could also be challenging. At the same time, like you just mentioned, there are people that need to experience the collective fear, the collective worry, the collective shame, the collective guilt, so that they can put themselves on the frequency resonance of fear, shame, guilt, whatever, and then they can start to transmute it for the rest of us that are trapped within that frequency that can't seem to get out of it. So do you see how there's different layers?
Yes, I see what you're saying. But for those people, I mean, would your advice to them still, my advice to them would still nevertheless be, feel your emotions, but don't feed your emotions, be consciously aware of your emotions. I think that as you develop consciously and you start to, pay more focused attention on what's going on in that field, your emotions kind of burn themselves out. You stop, repeating the same, storyline, this kind of giving rise to the emotions, and the emotions kind of run their course.
Right.
Would that not still be your advice to people who are not emotionally stable, who are full of emotions?
Yeah, that's an important point. So how I coach my clients is that, first of all, it's okay to experience the emotion. So we can't judge ourselves for being angry, right? But because the anger serves a purpose, it's letting us know something. It's telling us a story. But what we do from there and what happens next is the most important thing. So you feel the anger, but then what other beings that are in a higher frequency, how they explain it to me is that they allow it to pass through their consciousness. So they're in their sense of awareness is, okay, I'm angry. Okay, well, I know what this anger feels like, and I'm not going to do this particular thing anymore, or let this particular thing affect me anymore. So you allow the flow of the emotion to go in and out. But we have a harder time doing that in the human low density vibration that we are in. So what I recommend to people is allow the emotion to come through. And what you do is you get in the pattern or habit of periodically, whenever you feel like you need to, release it. We are not taught how to channel or release limited beliefs, trapped emotions throughout our life. We just aren't taught that as children, which is why I teach that to children, and that's a big part of what I do. And there are many ways to do that. But the easiest and most simple way that we are physiologically born with, and it's part of our makeup, is to breathe it out. So you could, through the anger, we just say, what I tell people is, I release any and all anger in this moment that's not serving my highest good in you, for example. Or you could say any and all emotions that I'm feeling in this moment that is not serving my highest good, I choose to release it now. We actually have that power, innate power to do that, but we're not taught how or that we can, so we don't do it. So we hold it in. And we hold it in for a lot of other reasons because we're taught, oh, don't cry or be tough or whatever reason. And we need to process and transmute it. We need to learn how to transmute it and let it go. So have the emotion and then you breathe it out. You bring it to the surface and you say, I choose to release it now. That's your intention. And you exhale and you let it go. You do that for like 4, 5, 6 breaths, a minute or two. You'll feel like $1,000,000. You're like, man, I feel so much better. And that's how, if we're taught those simple techniques as children throughout our life, adults would be way different. We wouldn't have such rage issues. Now, of course, extreme emotions like rage and anger can also be entity attachments. But if we let it go, we won't get those entity attachments because we are in and out of that vibration pretty quickly. So the entities don't want to hang with us because now the anger is just quick and then it's gone. And then they're like, well, wait a second, I don't like this person anymore. Their anger is gone.
Exactly. Yeah, you're not conducive. Your energy field's not conducive to their vibration. Okay, interesting. Yeah. Interesting.
Hey, Sherri, what about empathic people? Like, I've been an empath my entire life. That's how I got into the paranormal. Actually, I've been doing it for 30 years now. But you feel everything. You walk into some place, you can feel the anger, the tension. You can feel if someone's having a bad day. You can feel the emotions. What about people like us? Did we come from someplace else? And this is, I have no idea. And I'm often asking myself, why am I being put through this experience? of having to feel all the anger, having to feel all the sorrow. I too work with people with disabilities, and to me, it's very rewarding. But I often wonder why it's like my life kind of just pointed me into these directions without my say. Is there a reason for that?
Well, I have a different perspective because I believe that you chose that. And being empathic doesn't necessarily mean anything other than you are of a higher density of consciousness. The higher density of consciousness we are, and the higher frequency we are resonating at, the more likely we are to be aware of everyone else, because when you are really embedded in the human experience and connected to the 3D, that's why we have so many egocentric, selfish people that are not empathic at all. They have zero compassion. They have no ability to connect with anyone out of their sense of awareness. It's all about them. The world revolves around me. That's how they are. When you come in from a higher, different frequency band, a higher density of consciousness and awareness, you can't help but tap into the energy of everyone around you. So you feel the energy of this person's sadness, happiness, worry, all of it, and you feel it all. And that's just you being a starseed. That's just you not connecting to the 3D and being beyond that and your awareness. But that's the side effect of that is it sucks. It's not fun. And we have to just develop ways, again, because we're not taught. We have to develop ways to navigate that challenge, because it's not a bad thing. You're not being punished because you're feeling everyone's trauma. You are a starseed that volunteered to come in and be of assistance and probably transmute a lot of the emotions that you are taking on. So what we need to do and how we should be taught as children is, okay, are these emotions mine or someone else's? Is this fear mine? This anger I'm feeling right now, is this mine or someone else's? Your body will tell you yes or no. And then you need to start to create or learn to create boundaries every day as part of your spiritual hygiene. So and it's simple. It's all in your intention. Nothing is complicated and nothing costs any money. I mean, crystals are great and I have this necklace and tools are fun, but really we don't need any of that. It's all in your intention. So you stand in your power every morning, you wake up and you say, I am divinely protected, supported, loved by the universe, whatever you want to say. And then you visualize yourself in your own light. You're not calling upon anyone else's light. You're not asking anybody to help you. You are expanding your own field of energy outside of you. And and you can make it any way you want. But your intention is, I am gridding myself in my own light, and it's not penetrable to any frequency that does not at least match mine or is higher. And you stand in your sovereignty and you be specific. And if we learn to do that every day, we will, and you say, I do not consent to 3D interference or anything that's not in alignment with my highest good. Any energy, any relationships, any interactions, and you start to do that on a daily basis as a repetition, you will notice that you are completely untouchable. And yes, of course, you'll be empathic. Like, you are aware of that person's sadness and you feel for them because you don't want to lose that, but you don't take it on inadvertently. That's the problem. We have to have boundaries. So you likely signed up to experience all of this, but you just need to learn how to navigate through the challenges of that.
Yeah, because what I learned over the years is it has really done a number on my depression and my anxiety. So now I'm pulled both ways all the time between my depression and anxiety. But I feel these different emotions everywhere I go, and it is like it's just like sometimes it's just extremely overwhelming.
And the good news is, Todd, I work with so many thousands of people, and once we have this shift in our mindset and we recognize that a lot of this isn't my own and this depression is not even mine, and this anxiety is just my body's way of because anxiety is actually a great tool. Anxiety will let you know something is wrong. Something in your environment isn't right. The 3D isn't right, and your soul's like, I don't like this place. So it's kind of a tool to let you know that change is imminent or necessary. And you just say, I don't consent to that. and I only consent to transmuting energy that I can handle at any given moment. And you just create boundaries, and you are the creator of your own reality and your own energy field. So you instruct it to say, I don't want to take on any more right now. And you give yourself time to create boundaries, and then you take the time to process and release what you've already taken on, and the limited beliefs and the trapped emotions and other people's depression. And you just breathe it out, and you go in nature, you do all the things that you want to do, go in the ocean, whatever it is. And then you are you're mindful and cognizant of what you're taking on and what you're allowing. Because we have the power to do that. But again, we are not taught. So we don't know how.
Excellent. Thank you for that, for explaining that a bit more to me.
Good. Hopefully it helps.
And how about the perspective, to come at this from another angle, the mindfulness perspective? If you're going through anxiety, and depression, you're suffering your imagination. All of these things that constitute the suffering, they require the thought, or rather they require the identification with the thought, or the identification with the emotion. Speak to that. What do you think about disidentifying with thought and disidentifying with emotion, and just seeing these things as appearances in consciousness, that come and go, and not seeing them as part of the self, and seeing them as something that is ultimately ephemeral or transient, that will dissipate on its own? What's your perspective on the disidentification of thought and emotion?
If we kind of look at our life and our human experience from a neutral perspective, and we recognize that the emotional side, as well as the conscious side, the mindful, logical, analytical side, so the left and the right brain, are tools and both equally necessary, then we don't look at it as something we're afraid of or intimidated by. So I think that the 3D is heavily designed to promote or to ensure that majority of humanity is in the left brain mentality. Why is that? Because the more logical you are, the more logical and analytical you are, the more you are tapped into the ego side. And I'm not just talking about arrogance and egocentric ideals, but you're more focused on the self, and you're more able to be divided and look at everybody else as the enemy, or I'm in competition with you, and or there's some sort of division between the two. Left brain mentality is very primal. That's that reptilian brain, unfortunately, and that's where they want us, because you're more manipulative. They're more able to manipulate you when we have a mass majority of society in that very firm left brain, because we discount the right brain. And the right brain is the part of that right hemisphere of the brain is our intuition, our imagination, our creation, our ability to innovate, to be innovative, our higher aspect of ourself, our spiritual and metaphysical and multidimensional part of ourself. We need that part, because that's how we manifest. That's how we create as souls. So is any one of those not necessary? No, we need both, but we need balance. And that's what I talk about in my newest book, Courage to Change the Freedom Movement. As I talk about the healing part, it's about that heart-brain coherence. That's why it's so significant that we have this coherence, this synergy between the brain, which is the logic, the primal human part of us, and the heart center, which is our soul. And if we can balance the two and recognize that both have purpose, both are beneficial, both are important, then we can work together. And that's where the sweet spot is. And no one's going to be exactly 50-50. There's always going to be people that are a little bit more left brain, and a little less right. That's fine. Or a little bit more right and a little, like I'm more right than left, but I have a really good balance. I've worked hard at it. If you're really extreme on one way or the other, there's disbalance, and we have to try to make up. and it's a process, and it's a lot of it includes the mind, the conscious, but also the creative. And again, if we were taught that in school, a lot of this goes down. I keep repeating myself on purpose. This is why I am a big advocate for education, and I work with children, because if we can shift the new generations that come in, then we won't have this issue in the future. So if we can create a new trajectory of how we don't indoctrinate our children, rather we help them thrive and introduce them to these innate techniques and abilities that we have from a young age, and cater to them and expand on them, then we won't have this issue of disbalance, a lot of the things that we experience now.
Very interesting. Okay, let's shift gears for the remaining time that we have. And I'd like to get your perspective on the extraterrestrial issue. And all of your sessions with the people you work with and the children, etc., how have they informed your perspective on the extraterrestrial issue? Or what is your framework and conception of what is going on outside of this planet or on this planet as well, but in terms of that level of things?
I'm not really sure what you mean by the problem. What do you mean by that?
I just mean the extraterrestrial question, as far as what's going on with ET involvement on the planet.
Oh, wait, as part of our ascension?
That and whatever else, is encompassing that, as far as ET involvement on the planet. What's your perspective on that? How has the interactions that you've had with the children who have memories of Mars and stuff, how has that informed your perspective, or
Okay.
What do you see?
So the positive side is that a lot of the beings that are connected to the clients that I work with are their family. So the extraterrestrials are actually their Andromedan family here visiting or watching over them, or they're like the woman that's Lyran. There might be Andromedans that are trapped here, and their Andromedan soul families are trying to watch over their Andromedan humans here that have been trapped, and they're invested to make sure that they are ascending. So there's a lot of help, but they recognize that we have to help ourselves. We can't have the savior complex. So a lot of the Andromedan beings will come in and incarnate as a human to help their Andromedan family and the Lyrans, but it's not segregated like that. It's not that black and white. It's not like Lyrans will only incarnate with other Lyrans and we're segregated. But the point I'm trying to make is that they're invested in our well-being and our ascension, because they recognize themselves in us, if I'm saying that correctly, and they want the best for us. They know that we have been suppressed and manipulated and controlled and enslaved, and they want us to evolve out of this. So they have a vested interest. Many of them have family here that they want to guide and help. And some are just beings that are interested and have no connection, but they want to know what's going on, and they want to see and want to help in some way, or they're just observing. Then we also have those that do not have our best well-being in their interests, and they're the ones that are messing with a lot of what we're doing, because they are part of what I call the network of the dark players. There's lots of different names for it, whatever you want to call it. But it's the powers that were, and it's a pyramid. So humans are just one very low level. And then we've got, there's reptilians, and there's all these different levels. And then there's AI, technology beings. And there's so many things. There's so many layers to it. So we have the negative aspect of the extraterrestrials.
Do you think that the AI, some people have the sense that the AI might even be overarching some of the extraterrestrials, that there's a kind of malevolent AI that has taken over the collective consciousness of certain extraterrestrial groups?
I believe the AI is almost like way up at the top. So that means that they are controlling a lot of the other species and beings. I don't know if they're at the top. I don't know the answer to who's at the top, but they are very high up at the top. So the AI is influencing many of the others.
Interesting. And just for our audience here, we're talking about an AI that has been here all along, maybe throughout human history, not a human created AI.
Not human created, nothing we've created. But that is why the subject of transhumanism and just technology in general right now is such an important topic, because we have to be careful what we're creating right now, what we invite in, and how we go about AI and technology in our current demographic and where we're going with it, because that's where Atlantis fell, for example. And that's where a lot of the power struggles that were created because of technology and AI, there's a lot of manipulation there. So we have to be really careful with that.
Mm-hmm. So getting back to the purpose or purposes of ET involvement. So from your perspective, you have the sense that at least positive ET groups, primarily what they're doing is assisting those of us who are on the ground, starseeds, etc. Isn't there a lot, I feel like I've gotten from the abduction phenomenon, that there's a lot of variability with this, it seems, if you can, take the accounts at face value, that there are groups here who have an interest in creating hybrids, because some of them not necessarily for nefarious purposes. Some groups seem to desire something about our physiology or the way we experience the physical reality acutely in terms of our sensory experience of it is something that they don't have, and that they're trying to create hybrid variations in order to have that themselves. And then there are potentially other species here. I've heard of a species, I think this comes from an SSP whistleblower, that are here just basically to get honey from bees. And they come here and they collect honey and they go back, apparently. Is there not a lot of variability and a lot of things going on? Or do you think that, what do you think about that as far as what's the major thing? Do you think the major thing is ascension, moving the planet out of the third density into the fourth density? Or are there a ton of extraterrestrial groups here for other purposes, that are unrelated to?
So there are a lot of reasons. There's a lot of activity. There are a lot of benevolent and malevolent beings here. So, and everything in between. And there are some that could care less about our ascension or anything to do with the humans, and they're collecting honey. I haven't heard that one, but I've heard other things where they're collecting minerals and things, but they don't wish to harm us. There are those that are interdimensional and are even interacting in a dimensional field that doesn't even really connect with ours. So, and everything in between. So I believe this is almost like a melting pot, where there are a lot of beings that are here to help, and they have our well-being and their interests. And there are others that wish the exact opposite and are doing everything to counter what the good ones are doing. And we have everything in between. So I don't think that there is one answer for that. I think that there's a lot of different ones. And I think it just boils down to your perception. I don't know who's winning. I like to believe that the ascension is winning and we are at the point of no return and there are more good than bad. But someone else could argue that point and say, well, I think she's wrong. And who knows which one of us is right. It depends on what frequency you're tapping into. But I believe that there's a mix of everything, just like there's a mix of human beings that are the most horrible people that wish the worst, and those that are the best, that wish the best on everybody and everything in between. Same goes with extraterrestrials. And there are definitely those that abduct and they are just here to genetically modify, to take our babies, to do the most crazy things for their benefit. And to us, to them, we are just a byproduct of something they need. So they look at us like we might look at some lesser species, than that we would think of, that doesn't mean anything, like they don't care about us, and everything in between.
Mm-hmm. How about the really dark element of the ET interference? I hate to put a label to them, but what people refer to as let's say the Alpha Draconis reptilians, which do seem to exist. So I'll just run my model by you. And I think that largely these players are non-physical, although there is a physical aspect of this ET intelligence. And they're doing something on the energetic level. And it may be, and it seems like it might be what everything revolves around, and in terms of what's going on in our society, in terms of wars, manipulations going on with the economy and economic downturns and things like that, violence on the streets, that there's a race out there manipulating human society basically to generate negative energy so that perhaps they can survive. And it's ultimately about, what do you think about this? So, and in terms of why they're taking the energy, I know there's a lot of sort of differing ideas. Some people think that they're taking it and they're using it for the purposes of manifestation. There's also this idea of their souls are at such a low frequency that they've essentially cut themselves off of the sort of background energy that we feed off of normally, coming from source or whatever. And that in order to basically sustain themselves or the integrity of their energy bodies, they require sustenance of an energy that is at a compatible wavelength to their energy field. And that perhaps that is what they're doing as far as why they are manipulating things on the surface so as to generate tons and tons of negative energy. Mm-hmm. What do you think is going on there? Do you agree, first of all, that there's manipulation to create negative energy for some purpose? And what do you think that purpose is?
Yes, absolutely. And that's what my Starseeds in the Great Awakening book is about that. And we call that loosh. So there's physical necessity for, there's an energetic system of feeding the frequency that they need to keep this grid going. Let's call it the matrix. In order for the matrix to thrive, it needs to maintain a certain low frequency. Well, how do you get it at a low frequency? Well, we have all the living beings, the human beings, enslaved, and if each of these beings, these human beings, are in a loop of suffering with dis-ease, lower vibrational frequencies of fear, anger, resentment, anxiety, being in fight or flight. That's why a lot of us are in the fight or flight sympathetic mode of our physiology is activated, which gives off cortisol, adrenaline, all of these negative hormones. That's loosh. So the loosh is their food. So that is how they keep the system thriving. And so I have coined the term 3D interference. And the 3D interference are all of the ways that I have learned how they do that. So how do they do that? I go through in that book, not all of them, but a lot of the ways that they keep that loosh system going. How do they keep us in a low frequency? How do they feed off of us? And then, of course, there's the physical element. So yes, there are reptilians that are underground that can feed off physically, with flesh and things like that. But then there are entities attached to those that are even more powerful that don't have a form. And those get power through not only the loosh, but more importantly, the what's the word I'm trying to think of? The ceremonies, not the ceremonies.
Ritual sacrifice.
Rituals, thank you. That's the word I'm thinking of. The rituals that are performed through large masses, through sports and concerts and all of these things in a large capacity. That's where they perform their magic, because they cannot create. I also resonate with what you said. They lost the ability to manifest. They cannot create. So how do they create? They use us to create through mass manipulation. So if we're all thinking apocalypse, whatever, then we've now created it for them, because we all use our ability to create. Because now I'm thinking about an apocalypse every second of every day, and I'm worrying about it, and I'm dreaming about it, and I can't stop thinking about it. And millions of people all feeling that same way. Now we've created it for them. Now that's that mass ritual. That's how they are able to keep everything going. It's like an assembly line. It's a factory. This is a factory, essentially. And that's why it's so important to have the starseeds come in and we distort and disrupt the process. So now it breaks down. It doesn't work anymore.
So it's interesting what you said, and this just kind of gave me an idea for another more fundamental reason as to why they've got to keep the negative energy output going. It's because also this sort of density that we're at has to be maintained. The sort of density of the physical plane, which kind of separates us, from the higher planes and creates the veil, maybe, in between this reality and the higher dimensions. And so there's kind of a broad reason why they have to keep the energy going, to basically keep the fence in place, or the barrier, or the veil that separates and blocks us off from these higher realities. It kind of.
Absolutely. I mean, that's where we get the firmament. That's where that comes from. That idea of this firmament. That's the frequency band that keeps it all together. That holds this whole thing in place. And that's the part that I see breaking down, because every time a starseed is born, like of a higher density, I've been shown that, and I talked about this in my newest book, I've been shown they come in almost like comets of light. So imagine this firmament that's holding everything together. So everything within it is really of a lower density. Now, every time a starseed comes in like comets of light, it's like a pinhole that breaks it down. Now, over the last, let's say, even 100 years, the frequencies are now bigger and bigger. So the comets coming in of the newer generations are making bigger holes. And now we've got holes all over the place. And now that there's so many holes that it's lost its integrity, that firmament or that frequency band, and it's starting to break down. And that's how the veil is thinning. And now people don't need near-death experiences anymore like we used to awaken. Now people are just in their kitchen and they're just like, it's almost like they're just spontaneously waking up, or they watch an interview like me and they're like, oh my God, you just changed my whole world. Just something you said just caused a tweak or a tune, and you know what I mean? Because the veil is, this opportunity is available for that to occur, and now it's happening by the thousands upon thousands and now millions, and now that's why we're at this point where there's nothing they can do to put it back together. There's only so many band-aids to hold it together. That's why we get this like point of no return ideal, because we really have gotten to a point where so much of it is breaking down, it's beyond repair. And that's why we see a lot of the physical, political, and current events that are so blatant and so obvious that it's just like they don't know what to do. It's clear that people they're panicking because they're like, I don't know what to do. Like, what do we do? Like, nothing's working anymore because too many people are awake, and you can't control the masses when we're more than they are and awake at the same time.
Mm-hmm. What are some concrete signs, aside from the knowledge that the starseeds are here and are carrying out this work? What are some concrete signs in the collective that, to you, that things are breaking down? I mean, I think one of them, of course, is that I don't know, take the pandemic, for instance, a psyop like that, which seemed to kind of fail massively in terms of, persuading a large portion of the population. But yet, it seems to me that in all these cases where there's a kind of awakening to some kind of agenda that, or there's this concern that they anticipate that, and that a lot of these people who have woken up to whatever particular aspects of the agenda are sort of herded into another aspect of the agenda, or another sort of paradigm that's still kind of within layers of the deception. Is there some concrete sign that despite that, that there's still this kind of consciousness awakening happening?
Yeah, and you are right. I mean, the pandemic was a big awakening opportunity, and I think it did backfire. So there were moves and counter moves going back and forth for a long time. I mean, look at 9/11, for example, and look at how humanity reacted to that, and how much it worked in their favor to create, because of that, created so many things that they were able to utilize to invade our privacy, and we gave them permission. So many things came from that to their benefit because it worked back then, because so many people were asleep. But now look, there's another layer of it, and then we had the pandemic. Same type of situation, different with more psychological elements to it, but similar. And instead, I don't think they were expecting it broke down. It didn't work the way that they expected, like it did, for example, in another event such as 9/11, which is huge proof that humanity was ready for this level of awakening, for this trajectory to shift and turn in our favor. So the fact that so many people awaken as a result of COVID, I think, is a huge marker point, because otherwise a lot of the podcasts and communities that are being developed that have developed over the last 4 years and 3 years and even the last 2 years, as a result of that, people are trying to find their tribe. They're trying to find people that are now awakened and like-minded, whereas before they were all kind of lumped together in the same kind of their sleeper. They were asleep and they weren't really awake to the reality. And now all these people are going down these rabbit holes, and now they're in search of others like them. And now people are finding each other. So so their way of combating that is to start to infiltrate, and that's what we're seeing right now. There's moves and counter moves, like I said. So their counter move is, okay, I'm going to have controlled opposition here. I'm going to put in some truther into the mix, and I'm going to throw them in, and they're going to say a bunch of good things, but then we're going to start to spread some lies. And we're seeing that, and we've been seeing that for a while, where we've been following certain people for a long period, and then all of a sudden they something happened, and now they're saying weird stuff, and they're acting funny. And it's clear they're infiltrated. Are they infiltrated, or were they infiltrating the whole time? We don't know for sure. But the point is, that's their counter move. So there's moves and counter moves in this spiritual process of this awakening. My method of discerning where we are or how we are doing, because I don't look at the news, I don't look at current events, I actually don't pay attention to any of that. I determine or discern our level of awakening and speed and trajectory based on a couple things. But mainly my sessions with clients, because I work with people of all ages all over the world. So it's not just American. And I can see that through the window of their reality, what's happening all over the world. But more specifically, because I work with a lot of children, I have been told that these higher vibrational starseeds would not continue to be born and wouldn't come in if we were not there. Because a lot of these ascended souls are so ascended, such a high frequency, that they won't even volunteer to come in until we've reached certain milestones. And the fact that they keep coming in shows me that we are continuing to meet these milestones. Even if it seems like we might be behind in some ways, we're still achieving different layers, and the frequencies are shifting enough that they're like, all right, I'm going to still come in. So my specific, unique to probably anyone else, that's my gauge, is if they're still coming in, we're still on the right track, because they would not volunteer to come in if they were like, whoa, things aren't going well, I'm not going to volunteer to come in.
right. That's a good point. So long as they are, you're seeing these children being born that are coming in with a mission, it wouldn't be, it just could not be futile, and or else that wouldn't make sense. Yeah, and I also see it largely on the ground level in people, in personal interactions with people, and I see, just beautiful acts of compassion and kindness. Also, I think when we look at, one of the things that I like to point to is the concern for animal welfare, which has just been on an everly increasing, trajectory, throughout, the entire last century and this century. To me, that's a sign that, yes, that we're clearly on this trajectory of ever increasing consciousness and compassion, towards. What do you see there? I think one of the really striking things is, and I point this out sometimes, with videos online, or despite all of the, the attractions and electronic entertainment, you see that there's just this unbelievable popularity with animal videos, online, that, I don't know, from my perspective, I look at that and I say, I feel that, like, that's reflective of where we are now and our consciousness level. What do you think about that?
Yeah, the animal kingdom is part of this ascension, and I work very closely with the animal kingdom. And my new book is actually about the relationship between the human and animal bond. So I have 20 years of animal communication experience and working with animals as a career, and I'm very passionate about their role that they're playing in our healing and our collective ascension.
It's a powerful force, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
an unbelievable powerful force that's making people feel emotions. It is just nailing us with these emotions that I think are really propelling us. Now that I think about it, to awaken and to prioritize, what we should care about. But go on, sorry, I didn't mean to.
Right. I mean, they embody the density of consciousness, or the frequency that we once were at. So they come in and they teach us, they don't teach us, they embody unconditional love. So they assist us in so many ways. So whether we're talking about domestic animals that come into our life to be our companions and to help absorb our lower vibrational emotions, and they help to heal us, but they also help to give us companionship, to show us unconditional love, and to feel what we don't feel, what we're not feeling outside, and to make us feel self-assured, to feel loved, and to feel grounded and connected. So they do a lot for us. And then wildlife has their own soul contracts with us to help ground and balance the frequencies of the planet, and to help represent a higher frequency, to hold the space for us, but also to teach us respect of how can we share the land. And it's really difficult for me to explain quickly the layers of it. This could be a whole other hour conversation, but the animal contracts that we have are significant and powerful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, interesting. Okay, Todd, do you have anything else to bring up?
I do not. But Sherri, I want to thank you so much for coming on and giving us your time. Oh, it was incredible talking with you. I have learned a lot, and I hope that we can get a chance to have you back on in the future to continue this conversation. I think it's very important, the things that you talk about, and you're showing us what we can achieve.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, and it's been an honor to come on, and I would love to come back, because there's so many ways we can go, and it's hard to get it all in one conversation. But we definitely went over a lot, and I'm happy to be here and to share all this information with you guys and your audience too.
Awesome. You are an awesome person, and again, I thank you immensely for coming on here and enlightening us and learning about things. So thank you so much. Jim, anything you would like to say?
No, that's it. Yeah, I just want to say, yeah, this was just amazing and very rich, and yeah, just a lot of great information, and yeah, we really appreciate it. Yeah.
All right. Thanks, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the show. Thanks for watching and listening, giving us your thoughts and opinions, and we hope to see you on the next episode of Paranomaly. All right. Bye-bye now, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in with us tonight. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Please be sure to like, subscribe, and follow to receive notifications when new content is made available. A Paranomaly Beyond Disclosure is looking to talk with ufologists, researchers, investigators, contactees, abductees, channelers, and more for upcoming shows. Or if you have stories, photos, videos, questions, suggestions, or comments, please contact us through Messenger or email us at paranomalypodcast@gmail.com. You can also visit us at paranomalypodcast.com for more content and information, including all our social links. I thank you again for watching or listening, and we hope to see you on the next episode of Paranomaly Beyond Disclosure.